Joining me now, Ralph Reed, chairman of the Faith and Freedom Coalition. Ralph, I caught the end, and I had to go back and watch the beginning because I was doing my podcast. But this seemed like a president to me, and I've watched pretty much every speech, who's so, again, as I said, at ease with who he is now and where he is now in his presidency, knowing he has a lot of work to do. Mm-hmm. Was that the way the crowd there took it?
Very much so. I mean, this was his 6th appearance at Faith and Freedom's Road to Majority Policy Conference, and he's been there twice as a private citizen, twice as a presidential candidate. This was his 2nd appearance as president, and I have to tell you, Laura, this will be my 11th presidential campaign. I've seen a lot of candidates come in. I know it's scary, but he was so at ease. He felt, well, it was a friendly audience, obviously.
Yeah, of course.
But the thing that I, just as a political actor that I was impressed by is he didn't try to be something he wasn't. He spoke for an hour and 20 minutes. He never gave a scripture verse. He talked about his heart shared their values. He didn't try to be somebody he wasn't. He talked about shared values, policies, and most importantly, Laura, he said, I will fight for you. I have your back when it comes to the people who want to marginalize you, silence you, drive you out of the civic square and back into the stained glass ghetto where they kept you before. I will fight for you. And that is music to the ears, not only of tens of millions of evangelical voters, but frankly, many pro-life voters who, after Joe Biden's flip-flop on the Hyde Amendment last week,
so depressing.
Very depressing for them. So I think it was a great speech, and he deserves an enormous amount of credit for being laser-focused on this vote.
One moment that I loved is when he said, Hillary called you the deplorables, but she also said, and this was her Reaganist. We don't have the soundbite, but he said, she also said you were irredeemable. Yeah. I thought that was kind of worse. I mean, it was like those moments.
Yeah.
He reads the speech, it's good, but it's those moments of humor. I was watching it with my producer, my broadcaster. We're in there, we're screaming. It was so funny. That is the Trump on the campaign trail that none of those Democrats, all 20 of them, not one can match that. That is Trump. That's who he is.
It is. And
I love that.
One of the things
irredeemable, Ralph.
He's a performer. It reminds me of, remember when Reagan gave the exit interview to David Brinkley, and Brinkley said, have you ever sat behind the Resolute desk and thought, how can I do this? I'm an actor.
Right.
And Reagan said, David, there were days when I thought only an actor could do this job. He's a performer, but he's also authentic. It's not an act in the sense that it's not who he is. Because the other thing he said, Laura, when he talked about that, he goes, this is a pretty tough business. He goes, think about it in politics. You say one wrong word, your career's destroyed.
And that's a natural, we do the same thing on TV. One thing taken out of context, clip it, throw it, send it,
Yeah.
But I love that, those little moments. I've got to say, of all the things, I love those moments because that humanizes him in a way that sometimes with just the regular, scripted speeches, we kind of lose that. But unbelievable event. But not all are happy about this, Ralph. Some of the left-wing commentators are just deriding Trump. How can this guy be appealing to evangelicals? Watch.
Everything they grew up reading in the Gospels now does not apply to their life since a guy named Donald Trump got into politics.
I cannot believe that evangelical leaders are calling Donald Trump the most biblical and best president ever.
The hypocrisy is unbelievable. Here you have somebody who not only acts in a way that is not consistent with anything that I hear in Scripture or in church, but also personally how you're supposed to conduct yourself.
Look, I think the reality is that when Donald Trump ran for president, I think a lot of evangelicals weren't sure they could be for him. But when he released a list of Supreme Court justices and said he'd pick from it, when he said he would be a pro-life president, when he said he'd stand with Israel, and you know what he said today, Laura? He said for 25 years, presidents of both parties came in front of you and said they'd move the embassy to Jerusalem, and all of them didn't do it. He goes, now some of them had good reasons not to do it. He goes, I did it. I take my campaign promises seriously.
But they're saying his personal foibles should, I guess, discount him, that he can never be appealing to. But that's not what the gospel teaches. I mean, not to get all biblical here, but yeah, so Pete Wehner and all those guys are like, we're holier than thou, and how dare you like Donald Trump? You're a fraud, Ralph, and everybody else.
Yeah, and I guess the argument goes that because at previous points in your life you've come up short, you've had a moral failing, or you came short of the mark that you set for yourself, you're what? Disqualified from every serving for the rest of your life? I don't remember that.
What Christianity is that?
Right.
Isn't redemption the whole part of the Bible?
You want to know
Isn't that the whole point of the Bible?
Funny,
Not
Laura?
part.
They've become everything that they've accused us of being for decades. They're the ones who are condemning and judgmental. We're the ones who are forgiving and believing in redemption.
Ralph, fantastic event. Thanks for coming here. You
Yeah,
had a long
you bet.
day. Thank you so much.
You bet.